It took longer than expected, but the Blue Jackets have finally chosen a new head coach. And we're going to talk about who that is and how I feel about it in just a second here on Locked On Blue Jackets.
You're Locked On Blue Jackets, your daily podcast on the Columbus Blue Jackets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Blue Jackets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I am, as always, your host, Jay Foster, here to give you the good, the bad, and the ugly about your favorite team and mine, the Columbus Blue Jackets. Before we get started, I want to thank everyone for making this your first listen of the day, or second listen of the day, since hopefully my interview with Caden Lindstrom was your first listen of the day. But we're free and available on all podcast platforms. We're over on YouTube and available on SiriusXM as well. Just a quick emergency podcast here, not a full one. The Blue Jackets hired their head coach after longer than I think anyone thought it was going to take. They've chosen their guy, and the guy is Dean Evason, who previously coached the Minnesota Wild for parts of 5 seasons, has I believe a 639 career points percentage with the Wild in the NHL, and is not my first choice, but he also wasn't my last choice. I think everyone wanted, and the Blue Jackets as well, wanted Todd McClellan to be the guy. They couldn't work it out. They had to choose between Evason and Woodcroft. They went with Evason. Again, it's not the decision I would have made, but it is the decision that has been made. In 251 regular season games, he has 147 wins, 77 losses, and 27 overtime losses. The postseason is where his accolades really kind of stumble. The Wild went 1-3, then 3-4, then 2-4, then 2-4, losing in the first round. Or the qualifying round in all 4 of the playoffs that he coached for the Wild, and then was fired 19 games into last season as the Wild went 5-10-4. But this was kind of something that I had picked out as like, I don't know if we want this guy. And someone I don't remember who it was, so like apologies if it was you, and I'm not crediting you properly, but the Blue Jackets don't need a coach to find success in the playoffs right now. They need a coach to get them to the playoffs. And for his faults, Dean Evason did make the Wild a playoff team in all 4 of the 3 of the full seasons, plus he was interim head coach for 12 games of one season. So I don't know that one technically counts, but all 3 full seasons, he was 3rd in the West, 2nd in the Central, 3rd in the Central. Back-to-back 100-point seasons in 21, 22, 22, 23. So we'll see. He also had, I don't know that I would call it a subpar roster. I don't know that he had the best possible roster to work with in Minnesota. Something someone else pointed out, the cap situation in Minnesota was real bad for a minute there because they had $15 million of dead cap space with Zach Parise and Ryan Suter's buyouts, which I believe they are still on the hook for. This isn't relevant right now, but it just occurred to me that I think they might be still on the hook for those buyouts. Yeah, they are, and this is the last year that they're paying $15 million. It goes down to $1.6 million next year, but that was such a choice of the leadership in Minnesota. So, like, I said a lot of things, the past week or so when we were talking about potential head coaches of, I don't know that Evason is the guy. I don't know that he can lead this team to the playoffs. I don't know that he did as much with the Wild roster that he could have done, but having picked up all of these little details kind of since the hiring and kind of over the last little while, he's still not my first choice, but I am intrigued as to I'm intrigued as to the potential here. And I know a handful of people have been like, oh, I'm not sure about any of Don Waddell's decisions. Like, he hasn't really wowed me since taking the job here in Columbus. But I wonder what people thought when he took the job in Carolina to begin with and made these hires like Darren York, like Eric Tulsky. And I'm not like Rod Brindamore, and I'm not necessarily comparing Evason to any of those guys, but I don't have faith in Waddell necessarily, but I am willing to play the long game a little bit here, and maybe, I am pretty sure he knows something that we don't. He's the GM of the team. He has the contact. I am a schmuck with a microphone and a webcam, So I am willing to give him the benefit of the doubt here. I don't know that I necessarily would have gone with multi-year contract, especially after the fiasco of the last 3 multi-year contracts that the Blue Jackets handed out. But again, we'll see where they go from there. Immediately after recording this, I am going to be sitting down with Seth Topal of Locked on Wild because I figure where else would I need to go to get the best possible insight into Dean Evason as a coach than the guy that's been podcasting about him for the last 3 years. So that's going to be tomorrow. Like I said, just a quick kind of immediate thoughts, insights, feelings, etc. about Evason. I wasn't thrilled to begin with, but I've kind of, and again, I think that's why these immediate reactions sometimes are better if you, like I was at the ice rink when it landed, so I had to, I had to get changed out of my goalie gear, and I had to get home, and I had to shower and not look like I'd just spent an hour running around a rink wanting to die. So I had time to kind of calm down and think about it and figure out what I wanted to say and figure out my actual thoughts on it. So again, wasn't thrilled about it to begin with, but have come around to the idea kind of in the last hour or so. So I'm interested to see what Seth says as we talk to him in tomorrow's episode. That's going to be it for me today from this little short episode. Like I said, just checking in, really. Thank you for listening. Thank you for continuing to make us your first listen of the day. I appreciate all of you guys. I've been Jay Foster. You can find me on Twitter at _Jacob Foster, JAKOBFORSTER. You can find the show at LO_Blue Jackets on Twitter and on Instagram. Go check out the interview I did with Caden Lindstrom, which was posted this morning on YouTube and all podcast platforms. And like I said, tomorrow we're getting the inside scoop on Dean Evason from Seth Topal. So make sure you check that out. And until then, make sure you stay locked on.